Good evening and welcome to NTD News. I'm Stephanie Cox. Here are today's top stories. Some states are moving ahead with reopening restaurants, now opening dine-in services in some places. Still others, like New York, are extending the stay-at-home orders. The national's total CCP virus cases now top 1 million. 16 Republican senators are raising concerns over developing countries' growing debt to China. The countries took loans from the Chinese regime as part of its Belt and Road Initiative. A Chinese lawyer reunites with his family after going missing for 5 years. He was a victim of the Chinese Communist Party's crackdown on human rights activists. And UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson had his first day back at work today after more than 3 weeks off sick with the virus. See how Taiwan officials miraculously picked up critical info off social media that prevented the spread of the virus. More states are starting to open up, but other states say not so fast. Coronavirus or CCP virus cases in the United States now top 1 million with nearly 140,000 recoveries. NTD's Melina Weiskup has more.
In a number of states, Americans started this week off a bit differently than the last. Now allowed to go inside restaurants.
So basically we just use the 6-foot rule. We've got booths in this particular restaurant. We've got a booth on this end and a booth on this end that are open. The 2 booths in the middle are closed.
Tennessee and Texas restaurants can offer dine-in service too, following social distancing. And today, Texas governor announcing the second phase of reopening, with other states just now starting phase 1, including Montana, Mississippi, and in Minnesota, around 20,000 businesses are set to reopen. But as more reopen, others extend stay at home, like in New Hampshire, Illinois, and Hawaii. And one Hawaiian mayor is trying his best to keep people in his city entertained.
I get to still be a mayor and hold the line and be stern and conduct business. But I get to release all of that and be my true self, and it makes my heart smile that people accept me for who I am.
And New York, another extending the stay-at-home order in some regions.
I will extend them in many parts of the state, but in some parts of the state, some regions, you could make the case that we should unpause on May 15th.
The state also canceling their presidential primaries, being the first in the nation to do so. New York continues to see less hospitalizations and new cases, and the devastating daily death toll still on the decline. New Jersey, the second hardest hit state, is seeing improvements too. The governor saying today that the hospital's discharges are exceeding new admissions. Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
Oklahoma's governor is calling on President Trump to declare the virus pandemic an act of God. He says it would help oil-producing states contend with the excess supply that caused futures prices to close below zero for the first time last week. In a letter to the president, Governor Kevin Stitt said overproduction of oil was a threat to the U.S. economy. Oklahoma's energy regulator says current production is economic waste. The governor says declaring a force majeure or act of God would allow oil companies to halt operations without the risk of their land leases being canceled. U.S. production reached a record high of nearly 13 million barrels per day last year, but the pandemic has cut global consumption by 20 to 30%, or up to 30 million barrels per day. And in New York City, at least 40 miles of streets will be open only for pedestrians over the next month. The mayor said the closures are to keep New Yorkers safe as they prepare for a summer of social distancing. NTD's Miguel Moreno has more.
Pedestrians are expected to see even less traffic in some neighborhoods over the next month. That's because the city's moving to shut down at least 40 miles of streets.
And the way we will do it, we're going to focus first on streets in and around our parks, very concerned about the streets on the outside of parks that oftentimes we're seeing that immediate area getting very crowded.
De Blasio said they're doing this to keep people safe from the CCP virus as they step outside over the summer. But this is just a start. The city plans to reach a goal of 100 miles of safe streets, which would include widening sidewalks and getting more bike lanes in neighborhoods that were hit the hardest.
And as I said, there's going to be a real focus on the communities that have been hardest hit. Every community in New York City has some kind of place for recreation, so it makes sense to focus there.
The city said these open streets will be in effect throughout New York's shutdown. Miguel Moreno, NTD News, New York.
April 25th saw a new low for the month of 300 new cases, and it's been falling for a few days. And some Americans gathered yesterday to attend church for the first time in weeks. But not every state embraced the reopening. One pastor in Virginia is facing a fine for holding an in-person service on Palm Sunday. Texas residents were allowed to attend an in-person church service yesterday. That's after the state's governor issued an executive order that considers houses of worship essential. But Virginians are facing the opposite situation. A pastor in Virginia was fined by police for holding a service with 16 people back in early April. The pastor is now suing the state, saying the governor is clearly discriminating against the church. And senators are raising concerns over the way China's lending practices are making the world's poorest countries heavily indebted. The U.S. senators say China's lending is not consistent with global standards.
16 Republican senators have expressed concern about developing countries being weighed down by Chinese debt. Many countries, including Nepal, Gambia, Sierra Leone and Mozambique, are heavily indebted to China. The communist regime offered these countries loans under its foreign policy project called the Belt and Road Initiative, or BRI. Beijing aims to build its geopolitical influence along trade routes linking China, Southeast Asia, Africa and Europe. Senator Marco Rubio said Friday the 16 senators sent a joint letter to Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. They urged the State Department and the Treasury to consider the impact of the Chinese-financed BRI on the finances of many troubled economies, and raised further concerns that these Chinese debts could lead to countries needing additional support from the International Monetary Fund or World Bank. Earlier this month, the IMF announced it would provide immediate debt relief to its poorest members, including Nepal, Gambia, Sierra Leone and Mozambique, countries signed on to the Chinese BRI. China rolled out the BRI, also known as One Belt, One Road, in 2013.
Amid speculation about Kim Jong-un's health, South Africa's president has received a letter from the North Korean leader, and it's dated April 27th. The letter congratulates him on Freedom Day. There's no way to independently verify whether Kim actually wrote the letter. Multiple outlets have claimed that Kim is dead or in critical condition following a heart procedure. This after Kim reportedly sent a letter to workers building a tourist site in the Wonsan area where his train was spotted in satellite photos. Kim has been absent from the public eye since April 11th, even missing an important national celebration. And UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson is back. It's his first day at work since he was hospitalized with the CCP virus. NTD's Jane Werrell reports from London.
Standing outside Downing Street again, the Prime Minister back to work.
I'm sorry I've been away from my desk for much longer than I would have liked.
He thanked the public for their forbearance for sticking to the social distancing rules, but he warned against lifting the lockdown too early.
And I want to get this economy moving as fast as I can, but I refuse to throw away all the effort and the sacrifice of the British people and to risk a second major outbreak and huge loss of life and the overwhelming of the NHS.
He's had more than 3 weeks off sick with the virus, which he referred to in his speech as an invisible mugger. The UK started lockdown later than many of its European neighbours, and the measures have been in place for about a month. More than 20,000 people in the UK have lost their lives to the virus.
I feel London is going through a very depressed time these days. I'm optimistic that better days are ahead in London, and I can't wait to see the people enjoying themselves.
It's very tough, but we see the benefits of it, and we're just grateful it isn't too restrictive, unlike some other countries.
The government is required by law to review the measures every 3 weeks. The next review is on May the 7th. Jane Worrell, NTD News, London.
And a group of UK politicians recently set up a research group to debate policies towards China. It follows calls from senior conservatives in the UK to rethink Sino-British relations. And the German government is taking new precautions to keep the curve as flat as possible.
Germany has made it mandatory to wear a face mask on regional trains and in shops in almost all parts of the country. The consequences for not wearing one range from a verbal warning to fines as high as €5,000. British Health Secretary Matt Hancock said that families of staff who die from the virus in the course of their essential frontline work will receive £60,000. This comes as part of the government's new life assurance plan. And Italy is finally planning to ease lockdown restrictions beginning May 4th. But now they're facing a new challenge, which is to avoid a second outbreak ahead of the reopening. In Spain, measures are already eased for some people. Finally, children under the age of 14 can play outside for 1 hour a day. 400,000 people in New Zealand are looking forward to getting back to work. The country is set to partly reopen on Tuesday. In France, the government still has to finalize how the reopening on May 11th will work. But the plan is to start with the opening of schools first. And today, the people of Switzerland enjoyed things they have been waiting for a long time. With the government easing restrictions, they were finally able to get haircuts and go to long-awaited dentist appointments. Singapore has deployed a robot named OR3 to help keep people at home. The new ambassador from the Public Utilities Board will collect data from its 360-degree camera and send information to officers.
In our business roundup, Apple could push back the release date for iPhone 12. Verizon extends its commitment to not cut service to customers during the outbreak, and stocks rise as global lockdowns ease.
The release date for Apple's iPhone 12 could be pushed back about a month. The company is experiencing mass production delays because of the CCP virus. Reports say the tech giant is reducing phone production by 20%. But the company still plans to release 4 new iPhones later this year. Verizon says it will keep a commitment to not cancel service or charge late fees to customers. The company will keep the measure in place until June 30th. More than 700 companies have now agreed to not cut service for customers during the pandemic. Oil traders are hiring expensive U.S. vessels to store gasoline or ship fuel overseas. Worldwide demand for petroleum has dropped 30%. Producers are seeking places to put their surplus oil. Roughly 85% of worldwide onshore oil storage was full as of last week. Stocks rose across the globe on Monday on news that more countries and U.S. states were looking to ease lockdowns. From Italy to New Zealand, governments announced the easing of restrictions. Britain said it was too early to relax measures.
Up next, Taiwan officials miraculously picked up critical information circulating on social media to prevent the spread of the virus. Find out more when we return.
How do we get to this point? Back in December, the coronavirus was already spreading in Wuhan, and the Chinese Communist Party was covering it up and punishing the whistleblowers who dared to report the truth. Their actions led to this pandemic, which now has us, in America, stuck in our homes and losing our jobs. To this very day, the Communist Party is still lying, making it more critical than ever for us to get honest reporting about China. The Epoch Times is able to bring you the uncensored truth because we maintain a network of underground sources inside of China, hidden from the censors of the communist government. For instance, our investigative team has been contacting individual funeral homes, hospitals, and they've obtained leaked internal documents which show that China's official numbers are massively underreported by a factor of at least 10. If you're looking for an honest source of news that can keep you informed and safe, check out The Epoch Times. Go to readepoch.com and try your first month for just $1 and get real journalism delivered straight to your doorstep.
As the number of global virus cases soar, many countries are taking note of how Taiwan responded to the outbreak. Even today, Taiwan boasts some of the lowest numbers in the world. NTD's Tiffany Meyer brings us more.
For 15 straight days, Taiwan has reported 0 new local cases of the CCP virus. Even with 24 million citizens and millions of people flying between mainland China and Taiwan every year, Taiwan only has 429 confirmed cases and 6 deaths so far. Many now consider Taiwan a model in combating the pandemic. At the end of 2019, Taiwanese health officials started to screen all passengers flying from Wuhan weeks before other Western countries. They were alerted to the threat by these 3 screenshots from Dr. Li Wenliang, the whistleblower from Wuhan. At the end of December, he wrote on Chinese social media, "There are 7 confirmed cases from the Huanan seafood market. They are being treated in isolation at the emergency department of Hohu branch of our hospital." He also attached an inspection report and chest X-ray results. The second screenshot, the inspection report, reads SARS coronavirus. The third screenshot is the Wuhan CDC's reaction. Dr. Li wrote, "The Wuhan authorities have not decided whether or not to make this public." Another hospital in Wuhan has confirmed it is SARS coronavirus, but the genome sequencing company BGI did not dare to report it. He added his department reported the issue to the Wuhan City CDC. When people from the CDC did reluctantly come to check, doctors said it's not the flu, it's some unknown disease. A Taiwanese netizen saw the screenshot online the night of December 30th and shared it to a Taiwanese chat room. The original post was then deleted by Chinese authorities. A doctor in Taiwan saw this and reported it to the Taiwan CDC. In the early hours of December 31st, the deputy director of the CDC went online to check and became alarmed. On the same day, Taiwan started to screen passengers from Wuhan. It also told the WHO Wuhan was treating 7 cases in isolation, implying human-to-human transmission. This was 20 days before Chinese authorities admitted human-to-human transmission was possible. The netizen who retweeted the screenshots again wrote in April, "Thank you, Taiwan, for a government and administrative system that can professionally and correctly judge the news, instead of treating me like the Chinese authorities treated the 8 doctors before me who tried to warn the public." Dr. Li Wenliang was one of the 8 doctors. He later died after getting infected. This netizen also said he is aware of the CCP's threat after watching its suppression of Hong Kong. He doesn't want Taiwan to go down that path. Taiwan has been denied entry into the WHO because of pressure from the Chinese Communist regime. Australia is a WHO member and takes advice from it. But Australia didn't begin screening passengers from Wuhan until January 21st. Last week, Australia's chief medical officer revealed that Australia got information from the WHO on the first day of 2020. He didn't say if the information included the risk of human-to-human transmission, but he did say the advice from China made the Australian CDC complacent about the threat.
We first heard notification through the WHO on New Year's Day on the 1st of January that there was a cluster of pneumonia of unknown etiology in Wuhan. In the second week of January, the advice coming out of China was that there had been no more cases for a week and that there was no evidence of human-to-human transmission.
Chinese rights lawyer Wang Quanzhang was reunited with his wife and son today in Beijing. It's the first time he's seen them since he went missing in August 2015 amid a nationwide crackdown on rights activists and lawyers.
Wang was initially prevented from returning to Beijing. That's after he was released from prison earlier this month following a several-year sentence for a so-called crime of state subversion. But he was finally driven home on Monday, arriving just before 8 o'clock p.m. local time. That's according to what his wife posted on Twitter.
How many times have I imagined this moment, this scene? I feel like I'm dreaming.
Li has been tirelessly campaigning for his release since he went missing. Her efforts include staging a 62-mile march from Beijing to Tianjin, shaving her head to protest his treatment, and filing almost weekly petitions to the Supreme People's Court. Before his arrest, Wang had taken cases deemed sensitive by authorities, like accusations of police torture or defending members of the banned Falun Gong spiritual meditation practice. He was sentenced to 4.5 years in prison for state subversion back in January 2015.
Coming up, psychologists share advice to help people cope with the pandemic's effect on mind and body. Find out what the experts recommend and more after the break.
%90 of news outlets in the United States are controlled by 6 corporations. They're not out to tell you the truth of what's happening. They're out to tell you the picture of the world that they represent. The mission of the Epoch Times is to chase the truth, to ground all statements in facts, and prevent people from being misled. This is a battle between truth and deceit. Subscribe today and join the Americans who are seeking truth and tradition. We'd love to have you on board.
Viewers have described China Uncensored like The Daily Show, but about China.
At the beginning, I was super excited when I got 500 views, and now the show's grown to about 500,000 subscribers on YouTube. One episode reached 7.9 million people. I'm a little freaked out that many people have seen my face. In 5 years, I see China Uncensored as the sole source of edutainment worldwide.
Psychologists have been noticing a rise in their patients' anxiety levels amidst the pandemic. They're now advising people to tend to their physical and mental well-being to lower their anxiety and stay healthy.
The ongoing threat of the pandemic has forced people across the globe into an abnormal living situation. As a result, psychologists say it's more important than ever to live a healthy lifestyle, both physically and mentally.
If we're going to wash our hands and wear masks and put on gloves, well, let's really do some things that strengthen our immune system.
Dr. Gilliland says there are 3 main factors to focus on: sleep, diet, and exercise.
But if you're sleep depriving yourself, you've weakened your immune system. If you're not eating healthy, you're starting to put extra energy and effort and burden on your heart and your cardiovascular system. And if you're not moving and that lethargic piece, it has an impact on your sleep as well.
Besides healthy living, psychologists also suggest taking extra care to improve mental health. They say things like reading, staying in touch with loved ones, or even just sitting quietly are crucial for maintaining a healthy mental state. Dr. Watley recommends thinking positively, as well as taking positive action.
I think it's really important that we talk about our feelings right now, that we know that this too shall pass, that we relax, that we do things that we enjoy right now.
Psychologists strongly suggest carving out time to go outside, as long as it doesn't conflict with guidelines from health experts. They say it promotes both physical fitness and mental stability.
Competitive swimmers around the world had their training plans derailed when virus lockdowns forced most pools to close. Not so in the case of Bosnian junior swimming champion Iman Advic. Her father has come up with a homemade solution.
13-year-old swimmer Iman Avdic is training in a 10 by 6 foot pool. The makeshift training area sits inside a greenhouse in her grandfather's garden. Clad in a wetsuit, she swims while tied to a cord that holds her in place. At first, Avdic maintained her form by hiking and running, but she had to find an alternative when authorities barred minors from leaving their homes as part of virus prevention measures.
Well, this is in some way very unusual for me, but everything can be done as before, just in a different way.
But she says she does miss swimming in a real pool. According to her father and coach, Evelyn Avdic, the metal-framed plastic pool originally stood in the open air. It was later placed in the greenhouse after he discovered the water was too cold. Avdic holds national records in the 50 to 1500 meter freestyle, 100 meter, 200 meter, and 400 meter mixed style, 200 meter dolphin, and 200 meter backstroke and breaststroke. Bosnia has confirmed over 1,500 virus cases and 60 deaths.
Coming up, normally attracting 2 million visitors a year, France's beautiful Mont Saint-Michel stands barren. Find out how locals are dealing with the situation after the break. Formula One's chairman says its 2020 season may finally kick off in July in Austria. The French Grand Prix became the 10th race to get called off in the light of the current health crisis. It was scheduled for June 28th. Formula One rules dictate a minimum of 8 races must be held for a season to be defined as a world championship. The chairman is hopeful around 16 races can be held before the end of the year, but they will likely be without spectators. And some famous monuments look very different these days. Where normally there are crowds of thousands, today, no one. We go to France, to Mont Saint-Michel, where locals spend their days with only the seagulls.
Standing alone in an infinite azure sky, Mont Saint-Michel, a jewel of architecture, rests in silence for a month. Normally, the famous tidal island off the coast of Normandy draws 2 million visitors per year. But today, only 2 sounds break the tranquility: the ring of bells and the cry of seagulls. The area is now under lockdown, just like the rest of France.
At 9 o'clock, they just said, "Sorry, sir, you're not opening." That was it. It closed, everyone left. We dropped everything.
The island lies empty, except for a handful of local residents whose restaurants, souvenir shops and cafes depend on the influx of tourists. It's said that the site was built after the Archangel Saint-Michel came to a bishop in a vision around 1,300 years ago. For centuries, Mont Saint-Michel has been a sacred destination for religious pilgrims looking to practice their faith. But without its bustle, it isn't the same for Brother Philippe.
Should we enjoy the Mount without anyone on it? It's a dream for some people, but to be pleased that life has been interrupted, I'm not sure.
France's lockdown is set to end on May 11th.
And that's all for today's news. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Stephanie Cox.